First of all, Happy New Year! I hope the start of your year has been fruitful. This is the wallpaper I drew in my last video. It already looks fine on its own, but I wanted to push it one step further by animating it using Adobe Premiere Pro. Here's how I did it. First, I simplified the layers in Procreate where I drew the wallpaper. I merged the shadow layers with their corresponding main layers and left the light layers separate so I could animate them later. Next, I saved all the layers individually as PNG files on my computer. Even layers with different blend modes, I usually just save them as PNGs as they are. For example, this light ray, when saved as a PNG, it looks like a skid mark. But once I apply the same blend mode in Adobe Premiere later, the effect ends up looking exactly the same. The same goes for shadow layers, using the multiply blend mode. I just save them as is. To stay organized, I name each file according to its layer order. This makes it much easier to place everything correctly in the timeline later. I also wanted the elf character's hair to move with the wind, so I created separate layers for the hair. It definitely would have been easier if I planned this ahead of time, but that's okay, I'll just work around it. It should look something like this. Uh-oh! My camera lens fell, and it's broken. Bro needs a quick timeout. Please don't judge me, I don't smoke. Now that I'm in Premiere Pro, I create a sequence that matches the aspect ratio of my artwork. Then I drag and drop the files into the timeline, making sure they follow the same layer order as in the Photoshop or Procreate file. I stack the layers on top of each other in the timeline. Here's what I did for the sunlight reflected onto the elf. As you can see, the two light layers are scattered outside the character. What I want is to keep the light reflections confined within the character's silhouette. In Photoshop, that's easy to do, you just clip the layer, but in Premiere, there's no direct option for that. So instead, I placed the main layer at the bottom of the timeline, then placed the sunlight layers on top of it. Then I duplicate the main layer and place it above the light layers. Next, I search for Track Matte key in the Effects panel and apply it to the two light layers. I change the matte to Video 5, which copies the shape of the top layer. Then I apply the same effect to the other light layer. Now the lights are properly confined within the character layer. After that, I change the blend mode to Color Dodge, which is the same blend mode I used in the original Photoshop. To make the lights move, I add the Turbulent Displace effect. I make a few quick adjustments, then click the animation stopwatch next to Evolution and add keyframes to create motion. I don't really have a standard method here, I just eyeball it. Then I do the same thing on the other sunlight layer, and this is how it ends up looking. For the hair, since I prepared separate layers earlier, animating them is much easier. I use an effect called Twirl. I select the Twirl effect because I need to move its center point. This blue point here is the center, and to animate the top left section of hair, I simply align the center point with that hair strand, somewhere around here. It should move like this. Then I click the animation tool next to Angle, and add keyframes again to get the movement I want. This is how it looks once it's applied to all the hair layers. I also masked out the parts of the hair that overlap on top of the helmet. Now here comes the harder part. I want to add more depth by using sun rays, so here's what I did. First, I changed the color labels of the sunlight and leaf layers so they're easier to identify. I reuse the same turbulent displace effect from earlier and apply it to the leaves. And again, by eyeballing the keyframes, I create a subtle animation. The movement should look something like this. For the light ray passing across the character, I play around with the position keyframes and also adjust the opacity keyframes to add some randomness. It should look something like this. Here's a bonus tip. You should copy the motion animation or any movement effects from the main layer and paste them onto the layers that the sunlight is tracking. If you skip this step, the sunlight layer will look like this. But if done correctly, it should look like this. From here, I basically apply the same techniques to the rest of the artwork. I also use the twirl effect on the leaves, but very subtle, like this. To add even more depth, I place an adjustment layer on top and apply the focus blur effect. I also inserted a sparkle clip I found online and placed it on the reflective gems in the armor like this. After a few final tweaks to the animation, I'm finally done. Time to export. Expect that this will take a while to render because of the large file size, so see you in the morning. In my next video, I'll show you a breakdown of my comics-inspired live wallpaper design, or you can also watch why I took almost 2 years off from art and how that decision affected my upcoming wallpaper.